Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mensa, Israeli government spokesman. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of July, day 271 of the October 7th war. A short update from me and then over to your questions. First, on our hostages, 120 of them, among them children, women and the elderly, almost 9 months now. Yesterday, I reminded you about Yarden Bibas, age 34, who together with his wife Shiri and their children Ariel and Kfir are a family being held hostage. Today, I want to remind you that Hirsch Goldberg Polin, aged only 23, is also a hostage. You can see a picture behind me of before and being held hostage inside Gaza. His arm was blown off by Hamas on October 7th. As they threw grenades into a rocket shelter he was taking cover from after being forced to flee the Nova Music Festival. Look at him, please. Say his name. Hirsch Goldberg Polin, 271 days. Israel will not rest until all 120 are brought home. Hamas are eliminated together with their terrorist threat to Israel, and we will return our residents securely to their homes in the south and the north. Yesterday, the Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, briefed on the situation in Rafah. Look, slowly, deliberately, methodically, and with precise intelligence, we are taking apart the Jew-hating jihadis of Hamas inside Rafah. Over 900 terrorists eliminated, commanders, at least one battalion commander, many company commanders, many operatives, terrorist infrastructure destroyed, underground infrastructure destroyed. It takes time, but we will not leave Rafah's terrorist infrastructure intact. With determination, perseverance, and patience, we are wearing down the murderers and accomplishing our mission. The Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists are exhausted. We, on the other hand, the IDF, are energized and determined to defeat this terrorist menace. Now an update from COGAT and their work coordinating aid into Gaza over the last 24 hours. 269 trucks with humanitarian goods went into Gaza, 219 via Kerem Shalom, 50 via the Erez West crossing, and 15 coordinations for humanitarian missions were requested and 15 were granted. One was cancelled by the organizer. 6 tankers of cooking gas went in, 1,000 blood units, medical supplies went in, transferred to Gaza from Jordan. You know, we've suggested many solutions to make it easier for UN aid agencies to collect the aid. What are they? I'll tell you. Alternative routes, relocating aid warehouses inside Gaza, collecting aid at different hours with private security, and many, many more. But for 3 weeks now, all we've heard is the hopeless UN telling us they're still assessing. So, as aid piles up in the sun, and those that really need it don't get it, and you can be sure that UN officials line up behind the microphones of willing media and pronounce that it's Israel's fault, of course. Look, none of this is new. In many conflicts around the world, UN food convoys are attacked by criminals. Gaza is no different. Yet only in Gaza, the UN stops collecting and distributing aid from the Kerem Shalom crossing. So we say once again, no more excuses. The UN needs to do its job. So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now take your questions, which you should put in the chat with your news outlet. Thank you very much. Okay, the first question we have here is from Jodie Cohen at WION in India. Please, can you comment on reports that Israel will soon test a pilot for humanitarian enclaves or bubbles of Hamas-free zones in Gaza to be run by Palestinian unaffiliated with terror, And how are these going to be managed? When are they expected to be launched? And what guarantee will there be that Palestinians who run the enclaves will be protected from Hamas, who have vowed that no other entity would run Gaza? Thank you for that question, Jody. I've got nothing more to add beyond what the Prime Minister has laid out in a fair amount of detail previously on the day after Hamas, as it's called here. Of course, first things first, Hamas needs to be defeated for there to be a day after. But I would refer you to the Prime Minister's comments, which he made on the 23rd of June during the Channel 14 interview. Next question is from David Clement from the News Forum. The deputy of Hezbollah says a full ceasefire is the only sure path to a ceasefire on the Lebanon-Israel border. Does that change the calculation at all for the war in Gaza? Thank you very much for that question. Look, the Prime Minister has made clear, as he mentioned yesterday, that there are many people around the world making all sorts of comments like these, that Israel will be prepared to end this war before all of our objectives are achieved. Look, no matter where these points come from, I would like to make clear on behalf of the government here, unequivocally, that this will not happen. The war will end once Israel achieves all of its objectives, including the destruction of Hamas and the release of all of our hostages. The government has directed the IDF to achieve these war aims, and the IDF has all the means to achieve them. We will not capitulate to the winds of defeatism, neither wherever they come from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, or from wherever they emanate. We are inspired by the spirit of victory, said the Prime Minister. And when it comes to Hezbollah, we're going to continue to act against Hezbollah aggression. We're going to use all means necessary to restore security on our northern border and to safely return our citizens to their homes. It is Lebanon and, of course, Hezbollah, the terrorist organization, which is operating under the guidance of Iran, which bears full responsibility for the deterioration of the security situation in our north, in violation of UN Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701. Hezbollah are a terrorist organization. They're in no position whatsoever to dictate any sort of terms. These UN resolutions are crystal clear, and Hezbollah needs to be behind the Litani River, one way or another, through diplomacy or through other means. Israel will secure its northern border. The IDF is ready. The people are united behind this objective, and we will be successful. This country's sovereign territory will be defended in the same way that any other country, any other decent country in the world would defend its own territory. Thank you. Next question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. Can you kindly respond to a Jerusalem Post article that alleges the Prime Minister was offered $50 million by Qatar? Thank you for that question, Joel. That's the first I've seen of that piece, and I really have nothing more to add. It doesn't seem to hold much water to me whatsoever, so I've got nothing more to add to that whatsoever. Next question is from, if we could keep scrolling down and keep going. Question from Naomi Ball at the BBC. You mentioned the Chief of Staff talking about Hamas losses in Rafah. Can you give us a sense of how much control and how much of a presence you believe Hamas still has across Gaza as a whole? And that's from Naomi Sherbel Ball at the BBC. Thank you for that question, Naomi. The Prime Minister has made clear over the last couple of days that the time of Hamas being able to run Gaza or to having a control of Gaza, remember, it was our aim to destroy Hamas militarily and their governmental capabilities as well. That time is coming to an end. We have made very successful efforts to destroy this terrorist army. Most of its battalions now are smashed. The stragglers which are left behind are regrouping, but they are not organized in a way which they were before. We've had tremendous success in Rafah. We're going through those tunnels. Yesterday I released details, the IDF released details of rocket making facilities which were uncovered in a tunnel. Again, in the Philadelphia crossing, this crossing is absolutely key because it's the lifeline for Hamas, and that's why it's so important that Israel retains control over the Philadelphia crossing, the border area between Gaza and Egypt. We know we're taking Hamas apart slowly, deliberately. We are with intelligence. We are doing it day by day. We are smashing them, smashing their battalions, and we are taking them apart. Look, I would just remind you that in the Second World War, not every single Nazi was eliminated. And in the same way, we think of our situation in the similar vein. But we know that Hamas's military and governing capabilities are being taken apart. We are coming close to this phase of the conflict, this intensive military phase of the conflict. I think overall the Prime Minister has made clear, and the government and the people support this wholeheartedly, that the overall control of Gaza will still remain in the IDF's hands, because the IDF, as things stand right now, are the only organization that can combat the terrorist threat from Hamas and from other terrorist organizations. But we are moving on to the next stage, a less intensive phase of this battle, because of the success which the brave forces of the IDF have had in destroying this terrorist menace. We say this again, that any other country faced with this sort of aggression, this terrorist onslaught, would have acted, we think, in a much more aggressive manner. We've done this carefully, strategically, with the absolute minimum of civilian casualties. We are confident now that the civilian to combatant ratio, the terrorist to civilian ratio, is as low as 1-to-1, which is unheard of in urban conflict, in urban combat. This is a very dangerous, very difficult war scenario, but we are going through Gaza systematically, and we're trying our hardest to keep civilians out of harm's way, to finish the job for a better future, not only for Israelis, but also for Gazans as well. Next question here is from Avi Wolf from JFeed. We're receiving conflicting reports about when Israel shifts to Plan C and less intensive fighting in Rafah. What is the benchmark Israel is using for moving to that phase? Thank you very much for that, Avi. The Prime Minister made these comments, I think, a couple of days ago now, about coming close to the end of this intensive phase. This war is not over. There is more work to be done. Our Chief of Staff of the Army, Halevi, made clear in his comments last night, which I shared with you just now, and I would point you to those comments. There is more work to be done, and we will, of course, the IDF and the government will, of course, keep you updated as the situation changes. Thank you for that. Now, we've got, I think, 3 questions here from Fred Ager, and Yahya Sinwar's whereabouts are known only to 2 or 3 people, according to reports. That Sinwar will not consider exile, and is considering 2 options: stopping the war and withdrawing occupational forces, or obtaining martyrdom. Is Israel still open to a deal with Sinwar exiled from Gaza? Thank you very much for that question, Fred. The Prime Minister did speak on this point in that 23rd of June Channel 14 interview, which he made, a fairly wide-ranging interview where he dealt with this point. And I would point you to the comments he made there precisely about Sinwar. Sinwar, needless to say, is a bloodthirsty terrorist, a bloodthirsty terrorist. And I think, well, I'll leave it to the comments which the Prime Minister made. I think he very eloquently laid out the position of the government. Secondly, Axios report that Israel and the UN are in talks with Elon Musk's Starlink over the possibility to deploy satellite communication system in the Gaza Strip to increase protection for humanitarian workers. Do you confirm that Israel is concerned with that the system could fail in the hands of Hamas and make the monitoring of Hamas's communications more difficult? Thank you for that question, Fred. I've seen those reports about Starlink. We haven't got anything more to add, except to say that Hamas are, of course, a genocidal, murderous organization. There is no trust whatsoever for anything, any belief anything which comes out of Hamas's mouths. They are baby killers, beheaders of women and children, merciless, bloodthirsty murderers, a rapist regime. So you'll forgive me for not wanting to comment on anything which they have said or haven't said. But when it comes to Starlink, we haven't got anything more to add on that story. Although I have, of course, seen those reports, but we haven't got anything to release right now. And there's a final question here, I think, from Fred Ager, Labour Party leader in the UK, Keir Starmer, whose party is widely expected to win the election tomorrow, has been attacked by Conservative rifles, saying that Starmer would be a part-time Prime Minister for not working after 6 p.m. on Fridays to spend Shabbat with his family. UK government's anti-Semitism advisor slammed the comment as dangerous. Is Israel's government concerned about the significant rise of anti-Semitic rhetoric and incidents in the UK, and in particular those that occurred during the 2024 election campaign, with 4,103 instances reported and 147% rise from the previous year? Thank you for that question, Fred, about the UK general election. Look, there has, of course, been a seismic shift upwards in anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish people the world over, in London, in the UK as well. Look, it's long been true that you can, a barometer of how stable a society is how is the number of attacks on Jews. There's a direct correlation between attacks on Jews and their stability and the openness of a society. So any society should be hugely concerned about attacks on Jewish people, and as there have been during this general election in the UK. We're in close conversations with the government of the UK. It's an important partner, maybe it's no secret to say that it's our best friend in Europe, and that remains the case. And we trust that that will remain the case, whatever the results of the general election tomorrow. Let's see if there are any other questions. There's another question here from Hannah Julian from the Jewish Press. There are conflicting reports about how many and which weapons are being slow-walked by the White House. Can you provide any details on what exactly is being withheld at this point? Thank you very much for that question, Hannah. The Prime Minister has made clear with his comments last week, he was crystal clear on this subject. I don't think it serves anyone to go into any more details than he has already given. The relationship with the United States is absolutely key to this country. It's an important relationship from both sides, and we will always work together, as we are working together, to destroy this terrorist menace on the 7 fronts which we're facing, which are all being orchestrated by Iran. The US knows precisely what the threats to this country are. They are very, very real. This is a threat for this country's survival. I think the US administration, US administration definitely gets that. I think the majority of people in the US get that as well. And that is why the relationship is very, very important, but we haven't got anything more to add about these specifics. But that said, our enemies should be in no doubt whatsoever that we have the means and the wherewithal and the ability to defend ourselves. And that is precisely what we will do, one way or another, diplomatically or militarily. One way or another, this country will battle the scourge of terrorism, Iranian-backed terrorism, and we will be successful. Okay, I think that's the last question. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. We'll have another briefing tomorrow at the same time. So in the meantime, please do stay safe, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye now.